big hello and welcome. It's Kate from Zen Stitching, and I'm super excited to be joining you today for another one of our artist chats as part of the Making Zen series. Today, I'm super excited to be joining Karen Lewis. Karen, a big hello and welcome.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you, Karen, and this is the second time you're joining us, so I'm super excited that you're going to be sharing more of your creative goodness with us.
Thank you. Yes, it is my second time, and it's was so much fun last time that I couldn't say no to joining you again.
It really is fun, and I love it because I get to talk to fascinating people like yourself. And I also love it because I just love all the creativity that happens as a
Mm,
result of you sharing your projects with us and just how they become this wonderful collection
mhm,
of creative mishmash as everybody
mm.
kind of does a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of something else as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Putting our projects out into the world with we have no expectations of what people do with them, and they take them off into a completely different angle, and it's mind blowing for us as artists to see the creativity doesn't stop with just what we put out. It's what people do with it once it's in their hands.
Yeah, I know. It's always so heartwarming, isn't it, to see something that a workshop that you're guiding, and then
Yeah.
to see how people pick up and run with it, and through their choice of colors, their choice of materials, their choice of threads, it really does take on a
Yeah,
life of its own and
yeah.
becomes, something that even we can't kind of fathom.
Exactly. We can't anticipate what people are going to do with the projects. And some people do exactly what we put out, which is also lovely to see that done in somebody else's hands. But yeah, it's always mind blowing to see things that happen with the project.
Yeah, it really is. It's really quite exciting. And Karen, before we do a deep dive into what you're going to be sharing with us at Making Zen this time round,
Yeah.
I'd love it if you shared with us your story of how you found yourself in your creative practice.
So, Kate, that's an interesting story. As in, I started off life as an adult, as a working adult, as a phys ed and maths teacher in high school. I wasn't allowed to do art at school. I was on the more academic track, and it was only that I went to an all girls high school, and it was only the girls who weren't capable who were made to do art, and there was me on this track and didn't want to do the Latin. I'd give me the art, but I wasn't allowed. So the only art and creativity I did was at home, and so that was on, shelved. And so I went down the teaching route, and after having had my children, I stopped teaching for a while to be at home with them, because the logistics, family logistics of childcare and all of that typical scenario. And then when I went back to work, not very long later, when my youngest was in nursery, so about 3, 4 years later, I knew that I actually wanted to do something art related and didn't want to go back into the formal high school teaching. And I was a grown up by this time. I could do what I liked, not have to be forced to go into an arena that it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I started a company called Blueberry Park, which was curating and sourcing all handmade products from around the UK, whether that be um, ceramics, jewelry, textiles. So I'd go off and meet all sorts of makers and artists and have their host their work on my website. And it was during this time that I went back to my own textile roots, which was my grandma was a sewer, and so I was surrounded by fabric, but didn't necessarily have time or the inclination when I was growing up. But I always loved textiles. I can remember my friend at school, whose birthday is today actually, so this is very fortuitous conversation or serendipitous conversation. I was 12, we'd moved house. My mum she was doing up the house. She had all these different swatches of fabrics and things for all the different rooms. Now, what 12-year-old takes these into school to show her best friend how exciting it is? You know, my friends must have been, yeah, whatever. And even at that age, I was just drawn and really loved textiles and the patterns and the textures and all of that. So it wasn't really bizarre that I should go into wanting to work with textiles. And so I started, and that was my stepping stone into working with textiles and where I am today.
Oh my goodness, that's so lovely to hear, and so fascinating to hear the path that you've taken to get to where you are today. And it's really quite interesting, isn't it? Because you mentioned that if academically in school you're encouraged to go
Mm,
down the math, science, English paths,
yeah,
and art is kind of considered something, maybe an easy class perhaps
yeah,
might be a way of describing it.
yes.
And times have changed, haven't they? Thank
So
goodness.
much. Honestly, I can't tell you. So my niece, who is now a doctor, she was very arty at school, and she did keep her art going all the way to A levels, are our final exams, entry into university. And her art A level was accepted for getting into medical school. So,
Oh,
that's incredible how she had to have biology, and I can't remember if there was physics she had to have, or chemistry maybe, but art counted as one of her three entries into medical school. So it really has changed.
I
Yeah.
love hearing that.
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, just our perceptions of art have changed, but also our understanding of just how beneficial art is
Absolutely.
on so many levels.
Yeah.
And, quite often uh, people who are, scientifically minded or mathematically minded, there's a great connection there with the arts, whether it's visual or music. There's a really nice interplay with
Yeah.
the two. So it's fabulous that it's now recognized.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
absolutely love it. And
Yeah.
I'm thrilled also to hear that it was your grandmother that kind of passed on her love of textiles and creativity to you.
Yeah.
Karen, I know one of your great loves is quilt making. Is that something that you saw your grandmother doing and you felt inclined to do as well?
No, not at all. So we didn't have any quilt making history in our family. My grandma loved sewing clothes, so she
Mm.
was a seamstress, um, a hobbyist seamstress. It wasn't a, a job for her. So no, I never saw a quilt. The nearest I got to quilt making when I was young was we had a fabric designer called Laura Ashley in the UK in the 70s, 80s, and every little girl had. They used to produce little English paper piecing little kits with. I think there must have been. So she was an upholsterer and home accessories fabric designer, and I think they must have made these kits out of the cut-offs from the leftovers from the curtain kits or the yardage or whatever. And I remember going to one of the stores with my grandma, and they had these little packets of fabric cut-offs and the little hexy EPPs in there, and goodness knows what happened to it, but I made a few and sewed them together, but nobody in the family did it, so it was never going to go beyond that. I have no idea what happened to that, but I obviously always loved playing with different fabrics and things. And it was actually only when I was running Blueberry Park and I had a stall at a Christmas fair, local Christmas fair, and I met a really lovely lady who was a quilter, and I saw her quilts, and I just fell in love with them. I just thought this was the most exciting thing that I could ever do in life, and I haven't stopped since. And
Mm.
that's about 20 years ago.
So would you say that so you've always had a love of fabric, and I mean it's just so tactile, and the
Yeah,
colors that you can get and the patterns, and you, particularly if your grandmother was a dressmaker, so you've always got these great,
yeah,
offcuts to play with as well.
exactly. Yes.
um, and just the ability to pick up and put things together, colors and
Mm.
fabrics, all that kind of thing. Would you say that you said that it was around the time that your children were young, and you're like, I don't want to go back to school.
Exactly.
Was that kind of
Yeah.
around when you saw the quilt artist that you were
It
referring
was
to?
exactly then. Yes, it was exactly then. So I started Blueberry Park when my children were uh, 8, 6, and 4. So we'd moved back to Leeds from London, and I started my business, and I started doing these craft fairs pretty much straight away, and I met this lady then. So yes, 20 years ago, at the beginning of that journey. And it was actually because of that that I started veering off doing my own makes for Blueberry Park, and it
Mm.
came to a crossroads where was I going to be sourcing new products and hosting and showcasing other artists' work, or was this making of my own taking up too much time, which it was. So I ended up having to, or deciding to go down the crossroads of doing my own things and stopping representing other artists, which was
Okay.
sad, and I miss it. I loved the connection like this with other artists,
Mm.
but I couldn't do it all.
Yes, well, it's
Um,
and that I'm sure would have taken a lot of soul searching, because
it did.
it does bring a lot of joy to connect artists
Yeah,
and talk to artists, and
yeah,
just the synergies that happen when you're in a room of creative people. But I'm
yeah.
sure you probably also carried forth a lot of friendships from that too, and connections.
Exactly, I did. I'm still in touch with quite a few of the artists today, which is lovely. One of the ceramicists whose work I used to showcase, I'm always going to her for wedding gifts and other gifts, and that kind of thing. So it is. And I've got all sorts of things around the house that were items that I had in the shop and I now have in my home. And that's so lovely. I love, it's very memorable to pick them up and to think about the artist and
Yeah.
those days.
They
Yeah,
really are. And it's something that I was reflecting on recently, on how important it is to have beautiful objects in the house, and even better if they're handmade, and you have that association with the artist or a place, or there's some kind of nice connection between the objects that you have and
yeah,
the stories and the memories that they have as well.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Which is, I guess, where some quilts come into play, isn't it? Because you not only have the finished item of the quilt, but quite often the quilts also have special fabrics, either upcycled clothes from other family members, or even just the experience of going out and buying the beautiful fabrics to create the
exactly. Yeah.
quilts.
When I first started quilting, I had a real passion for hand printed fabrics. So I was sourcing hand printed fabrics, and a lot of them actually were from Australia. It was Australian designers who were printing at that time, and well, they still are. And I was buying a lot of fabrics to use personally in quilts from designers in Australia, and I most of my original quilts were made using hand printed fabrics, using things like linens, lots of lovely textiles, and tactile fabrics. And it was using these that made me want to design my and print my own, rather than shipping fabrics from the other side of the world. And it was seeing all of those and having access to those that kick-started my printing journey. So that also is was a very special time.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's so fun. It's really interesting, isn't it, when a need arises and you're like,
Absolutely.
well, I could go out and make my own or design my own, which then takes you down another rabbit hole
Yeah,
of
yeah,
creativity and fun and
exactly. Yeah,
excitement.
yeah, exactly. It was very much that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I find it quite interesting that you were attracted to a lot of Australian designers. A friend of mine, she's a wallpaper designer, and she's worked in the UK and also in Australia. And she was saying that there's quite remarkable differences in the color palettes between, say, Australian designs and UK
Absolutely.
designs, and
Yeah.
other parts of the world. It's a kind of very much a cultural thing.
Definitely, it really is. In fact, I was talking about this to a friend of mine, Lorena Uriarte. I don't know if you've come across Lorena. Her work's amazing. You should look her up. Um, she's called Lorena in Sid on in Instagram,
Okay.
and we were talking about this, how the Australians, obviously, I mean, my day is grey out there today. It's the most revolting autumn day you could ever see. Sometimes we have a nice Indian summer in September, but
Mm.
September so far has decided not to play ball with that. And so we were looking at different fabrics. We both do Quiltcon together, and we were looking at different fabrics. And she was drawn to the bright colours and the, really beautiful, gorgeous colours out there, whereas I was pulled to the kind of colours I'm wearing now, and indigos and washed out colours. And it made me think, actually, that it's really bizarre that you'd have thought that over here we'd be drawn to the bright colours because we don't see them when
Mm.
we look out the window most of the time. So you'd think you'd want to compensate with that. But I think it's your fabric colours, I think and your any artistic colour choices are based on reflecting what you're seeing. So if you're seeing the bright sunshine, that's what you want to be surrounded by. Whereas if you're seeing the greys and the khaki and that's sort of the palette that is inbred almost. It's really bizarre, but
Mm.
it's and if you see all the fabrics in Australia that are produced there, they're bright and they're zingy, and it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it completely is. And because, I spend a majority of my time in Nova Scotia, Canada, and walking into a fabric store there is a completely different experience than walking into a fabric store in Australia. Like you say, the colors are bright. There's a lot of Australian motifs of, the wildlife and the fauna, and just very vibrant and quite joyful and happy. It's a delight to see,
Yes,
um, just to see all these kind of different vibrancies, and or it could quite likely be a trend as well at the moment, where there's lots
yes,
of
yeah,
floral
yeah,
and all that kind of stuff too. But I also think that in part, like what you're saying, you're drawn to, kind of like the moody colors, so to speak, like the
yeah,
indigos and the grays and those shades as well. I think it's also it's a personal preference too, in a sense, isn't it?
Absolutely, definitely, because Jo
Mm.
Avery, who one of the Thread House partners, she definitely is more Australian in her choices. You know, she's very vibrant, both in personality and what she wears, and her fabric choices for crafting with and sewing with.
Mm.
So yeah, she's definite, and obviously, it's not a um, cut and dry thing that if you're here in England or here in the UK, you're stitching with low volume and more less vibrant fabrics. Obviously, there's plenty of people that love vibrant fabrics, but as a whole, I think it's definitely the way it is.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and I
Yeah.
do love that. Would you say, Karen, that your primary interest as a textile artist is quilting and patchwork, or is that just too much of a pigeonhole? Because I know you love doing, printmaking and applique and
So I would say I would put applique in the quilting realm anyway. So anything that I stitch tends to be incorporated into the quilting world.
Mhm.
So I would say that I am extremely passionate about quilting. I cannot stop stitching, whether it's in front of the TV at night, whether it's in a car journey or a train or anywhere. I can't sit idly without doing something with my hands. And I think most of us who are makers are like that. And, I look around and see the family watching the movie or watching whatever it is, and they're just sitting there. Hopefully, they're not scrolling their phones as well, because we try not to do that while you're watching a movie or watching television. But, they're just sitting, and I just am restless. I can do it if I go to the cinema, but at
Mm.
home, I can't do it. It feels, I don't know. I've always been fidgety, so maybe it's partly that. I don't know. And then the printing side of things, because it's not as easy to do when you're in all your spare moments. It's more of a decision to get up and physically do it. So
Mm.
I'm probably not doing it as much as I'm stitching, but I'm still as passionate about the design for it, the printing, the teaching of it. And if you told me I couldn't do one of them ever again, I'm not sure which one it would be, but on a practical level, it would be. If you wouldn't, I'd probably stop the printing because of how much time I take up doing stitching. But don't make me choose.
No, no. Well, I was just thinking the same thing. I thought, gosh, if someone said that to me, what would I do? I'd seriously have to think very hard
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. I mean, the good thing is, the thing that I'd be left with is one of my passions anyway. So it's not like you're forcing me to do something I'm not enjoying. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's so true. And
yeah.
that's a really fun way to think about it. If what would you select if you were only allowed to choose one option? And I think that's where textile arts is really fun because textiles encompasses so many different techniques.
Yeah,
So to be able to say you're a textile artist or even a fiber artist just really does open the doors to so many different ways of working and materials to work with and skills that you can develop as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And Karen, whilst you say you're a quilter, I would perhaps say that you're a modern quilter in a sense, and you like to bring in new
Yeah.
ways of working and contemporary ways of thinking.
Mm.
How do you find your inspiration, particularly on days when it might be difficult to create?
Oh, Kate, I don't think that many of us have a problem with inspiration. I think we have a problem with time and lack of it to actually do everything it is that we want to do. So yeah, I don't have a problem with inspiration at all. Whether it's I spend a lot of time um, outside, walking my dog. Probably hear us scratching the carpet in the background there.
Is that is
um,
that Tim?
and being outside is just so incredibly good for my mental health and opening my mind. And without even thinking, inspiration comes to me because I think you're outside, I don't take my phone with me. So I just am present in that moment of being on the walk and being in nature. And whether it's, I have a very overrun mind the majority of the time, and always thinking of 20 things at least at once. So when I go on my walks, it's really good for my mental health to not have that constant conversation in my mind. And for me personally, when my mind is freed up, just inspiration fills in the gaps. And it might be a shadow that I've seen on the ground. It might be, you know, a pattern, the way the fields are. It might be a flower that I've seen. So I find it inspiration in that sense really easy to come across. And it might be that I've seen something or felt something and I come home and either doodle it or I'll quickly give it a play, and I might think, oh no, that's not going to work anyway, and discard it straight away. So I'm very much one for being in the moment, and anything that I've seen, I'm very quick to throw everything else to one side and have a quick trial. And I think it's almost like I want to get the idea in and out again as quickly as possible if it's not going to work. I don't want that then cluttering my mind, having that little noise of, you haven't tried me yet, you haven't done me yet. So I'm very quick to, see whether an idea is going to come to fruition or not, and then just opening up my mind to other things.
That's really fun to hear that you have the idea and then you go and implement it straight away, whether it's writing it down or doing a quick fiddle, for want of a better way of describing it, just to play. Because
Yes.
I know quite often I come up with an idea and I think about it and I think about it some more, then I'll think about it some more, and then I've overthunk it and the
Yeah.
idea's done, and I have never even, it has never kind of turned into like a physical thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real shame. That's something that I need to work on, because
Yeah,
the moment,
definitely.
yeah, the moment you start working with something, that's when the idea is going to be translated. Like you say, it could be discarded if it's not right, but it
Yeah,
could be the germ of something even bigger and better that you hadn't
exactly.
even thought about.
Exactly. And that's often what happens. So again, ideas that stay in my head, sort of never really come to fruition. They might do at a later date when they've been, there's been something else to instigate this similar idea. But if I don't give it a little play, and that's what happened really with the project that I'm doing for Making Zen. I saw something in when we were in Mexico earlier this year, and it's sparked an idea in my head. And I thought, as soon as I got home, I had to try it out. I didn't have the things with me there, unfortunately, and I had to try it out. And it took a 2 or 3 months really of trying it, putting it to one side. I have a pile of things on my desk that are my sewing table, that are things, works in progress, or ideas in progress. And so I might do a little something, and if it's not terrible or a definite no, which then goes immediately into the trash, because I don't want to clutter up my ideas pile. But if it's
Mm.
something that I think, oh yeah, there's definitely a germ of an idea here, that's definitely, when I've got a bit more time, I could see where this goes. I put it on this pile, and when I've got some time to explore, I'll look through the pile and see what sparks and speaks to me in that moment that I might want to peruse a bit longer. And so, yeah, that's very much what I do. If it stays in my head, I it's sort of forgotten, and
Mm.
I tend not to then act on it.
Yes.
You know.
And something that you touched upon earlier, Karen, which I had to laugh at, is not the lack of inspiration, but the lack of time, because I think that's something that we all come up against. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering how you uh, find time or carve out time to spend in the studio.
So I'm in it most days all day. It could be that I'm having to work through a to-do list of things that I'm needing to create, or emails or that kind of thing. I don't always have time to create from new. Um, Certainly not every day, but I do try. And I did go through, for every January I have a New Year's resolution of carving out time to explore, and then it doesn't last long because there's so much that needs doing that I get distracted and don't do that. And I really try on a Friday at the end of the week. I'm very much a list girl, and I've already got such a long list for today, and the list rolls over as the week goes on, and I try and get through everything before Friday, or at least get through everything that needs to be done by the end of the week. And most often the next week I've rolled things over to the next week of things, but that's okay. Some of them are long term deadlines, so I like to see them on my list so that I haven't forgotten them, and it might be I do a little bit of them, but I try and carve out time if I can on a Friday. Doesn't always work, but that's the aim, to do new things, to play, have that play and have that experiment on a day, and just be free to do that. And it's a nice way to finish the week as well, when you've been working towards something that somebody else is implementing in you. It's really nice and important as a creative to have time that you're allowing those seeds of ideas to come to fruition, and have a play with them.
Yes, absolutely. And on that note, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're going to be sharing with us at Making Zen.
Yeah, so I'm going to be sharing what I've called Snip and Stitch. So it's a reverse applique, and they're little lavender bags. I'll hold up the little pile because they're so cute as a pile. So we've got these little, and again, soft colours, indigos, and they're called Snip and Stitch because I snip little lines and stitch those under. So we're stitching raw needle turn applique, and the lines can be all sorts of shapes, but it's just one line that's cut out of a piece of fabric, and then the shape comes from how much fabric is moved out
Mm.
of those, and starting with quite simple shapes. And as you can imagine, Kate, we're going to see so many incredible shapes from this idea. So those again are just one lines cut out and creating. And I love this one that you can see different things in it. See the leaf pattern in the middle there that jumps out.
Ah, yes.
Um, so I thought I would do small, accessible little shapes that people can do, maybe have time for one of them in the week of the Making Zen. So these are
Mm.
pretty, they'll take a couple of hours maybe. So that's a lovely little project for people, and then we could turn them into a mug rug. I've turned them
Mm.
into lovely lavender bags, which
Mm.
are one of the nicest things in the world. Um,
They look so tactile too. I
they're
can see you having
so
fun touching
tactile, they're
them.
so
Mm.
lovely. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing.
Oh, super fun. They look like such a great thing. Like you say, people can follow them along with your workshop step by step, or do their own kind of uh, snipping and
Yes,
create their own
yeah,
kind of shapes depending
exactly,
on what happens with the scissors.
exactly. So it's going to be really exciting to see what people do.
Yes, it
Yeah.
certainly is. And would
Yeah.
you like to give us a little hint of what you're sharing with us for the VIP pass?
So I'm offering one of my online video classes from the Thread House Academy. Do you want to see a picture of it or?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I was searching for the project this morning. I completely forgot to look for it. Oh, I was away at retreat last week, and this weekend has been a catch up, and I forgot to do that. But it's a curved English paper.
Mm,
It's a bit blurry on there and a bit of reflection. Uh, each of
beautiful.
these are curved English paper piecing. You can
Amazing.
see the crossover sections in there, these
Mm,
little bits. Um, so again,
beautiful.
neutrals from me, but people have done gorgeous vibrant versions from in fact, I've got another one here that was a little bit more vibrant. Might be able to see it a bit better.
Oh, wow. Oh, it's fascinating how it changes just with the
Yeah,
choice of color.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
So that is going to be my offering for the
Oh, that's so
VIP.
exciting.
So I hope everybody really enjoys that and has a lot of fun with it.
I would say they will. I would say they will. Well, Karen, I could talk with you all day, and it's been an absolute delight to touch base with you and find out what makes you tick and what you're going to be sharing with us for Making Zen. I'm sure you have a puppy who is dying to go for a
Yeah, she
walk.
is. Although, having said that, she's seen what the weather's like outside, so she's probably quite happy to be staying in for a little bit longer. But we'll go off and we'll see what germs of ideas might come today. Who knows?
Yes,
Who
well,
knows?
that's right. And isn't that wonderful that you can go for a walk, you're spending time with your beautiful puppy, you're outside,
Yeah,
getting fresh air and
yeah.
exercise, but also letting those ideas germinate at the same time.
Exactly. Although it's Monday today, and my head is on my long list of things that need to be actioned when I get back. So Monday, I tend to be less focused on where I am and more focused on getting back and kick-starting the week. So probably no new ideas today, but you never know. You
You
never
never know.
know.
They always come when you least expect
They
them.
do. They really do. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me in this creative journey. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you'd like to learn more about Making Zen, please check out the links below where you can find out all about the workshops, creativity, community, and all that kind of good stuff. Wishing you many happy hours of stitching.